to Street Circle Drive here on the Mesh Podcast Network. Street Circle Drive, if you've never listened before, is your North Carolina-centric podcast for people who love Hickory, North Carolina. I'm your host today, Andrew Moose. We couldn't do this podcast without you, and we sincerely do appreciate you tuning in today. Once you've listened to this podcast, we'd appreciate it if you'd head over to themesh.tv and subscribe to this show and all the other ones on our network so that you can get these episodes dropped directly to you whenever we release them. So today on Street Circle Drive, we have a very, very special guest, my friend. Please welcome Miss Rebecca Hart, the Executive Director of Hart Square. What's going on, Rebecca?
Oh, such a generous introduction.
Oh,
thanks.
you know.
I get to be called a friend. I feel great about that.
For sure. Well,
way better than Executive Director.
For sure. Any Executive Director who brings me beer and we get to drink on the podcast is a friend of mine.
I just brought Andrew Moose a little bit of the Cabin Fever Ale, which is made by Old Hickory Brewery. Old Hickory Brewery's been a partner for about 3 years. Stephen Lyerly, I don't know if many of you guys know this in the community. It's a wonderful historian, and he made this beer out at Hart Square on our grist mill dated 1760, the oldest cabin in our village. And we ground up the corn. We used some sorghum molasses, some wheat, and here we have it. Wonderful beverage to enjoy that supports the square.
It's awesome. It is an absolutely great beverage, and I'm so happy that you brought it today. After the past couple of weeks, everybody needs some good Cabin Fever beer, so thanks to the guys at Old Hickory for making that. It's delicious. So to the subject at hand, for those that might not be familiar with Hart Square, first of all, where have you been? And tell us a little bit about it.
Sure.
For those that might not know a thing.
So Hart Square Village is the nation's largest collection of historic log cabins. So when I say that, a lot of people, they sort of envision these places they've visited, like Sturbridge Village, maybe up north, or Old Salem here in North Carolina. And those are fairly accurate depictions, but we are actually even a little bit bigger than both of those in terms of the number of structures we have. We have nearly 100 structures from the 17 and 1800s. And what makes Hart Square so special and unique is actually when you walk into each of these buildings, which are set up in the form of a village. So we've got blacksmith shops, churches, woodwrights, printing presses, and homes. When you go in, the whole purpose is it's meant to feel like that craftsperson or that family member just stepped up moments prior and walked out. So when you go in our museum, there are no glass cases, there are no ropes up. It's just a truly authentic experience to interact. It's very different than any other museum you'll ever visit.
So, Rebecca, you have a few events out there every single year. You have your festival, and you have a multitude of children that typically come through every single year to visit and watch your demonstrators at your facility. Tell us a little bit about the festival that you guys have. And it just happened back in October. Mm-hmm. Obviously, COVID had probably dampened that a little. But on a normal year, let's talk a little bit about that festival and what that looks like.
Sure. So our annual festival is always the fourth Saturday of October. And for those of you who have been wanting to come, we are putting the tickets on sale online, usually in January or February, so don't worry, you won't miss out. It's a great event because it really showcases the artistry in the Southeast. And I say the Southeast because not every one of our artists is from Catawba County. We bring in over 100 different demonstrators to show us the traditional ways of molasses making, lace making, butter churning, cotton ginning. And some of these things are truly lost arts. They are things that you will never really see anywhere else. And so it's a very special day. It's also our annual fundraiser. And I really love the fact that our annual fundraiser is bringing the village to life. It is about teaching. It is about education. It is one of the most educational events you can bring your family to because, you can see so many things in one day. And it really feels like you are genuinely stepping back in time.
That is something that kids today, and even us as adults, don't necessarily get to see hardly at all. It is things from our past that are still being preserved and able to be showcased to the community. I think it's absolutely fantastic what you guys do. What are your needs right now? I know we talked a little bit offline, but I kind of like to get down to like the nitty gritty, and I know that you said that basically COVID has really taken a toll on fundraising efforts and things like that. So let's talk about how we can help.
Okay.
What can our listeners do to help? First of all, I guess come to the Christmas festival, right?
Yeah. So our next upcoming event is Christmas in the Village, which is December 4th and 5th. And that's really a miniature festival focused on the crafts and trades of Christmas. So we have chestnut roasting on an open fire. We have stocking sewing. We have corn husk ornament making. You hear these beautiful Christmas songs being sung from our little log church with a fire going in the back. It's truly a pioneer Christmas experience, and everyone's dressed in traditional outfits, and there's just a really beautiful thing about being in a space that's 200 acres with no light pollution, no sound pollution, and you can really experience what it would have been like to walk with your family to church or to a neighbor's house for dinner. So it's a great thing. COVID's been really strange for us. We've been able to have the festival and the Christmas events, but my favorite part of our programming is the field trips. I love doing the field trips, and we started that about 4 or 5 years ago, and it went from just being a couple hundred kids to now being just over 3,000 students. We serve students from this county, the surrounding counties, and last year 60% of our students were from Title I schools, which means most of them are on the free or reduced lunch program. So they might not take a lot of field trips a year, so we try to make it really, really special. So for us, this expansion with field trips is really where our biggest need is. We decided once they started expanding and we realized, gosh, our site is so historic that we literally don't have handicap bathrooms. We don't have pathways that you can walk on. We don't have a way to serve all the children that deserve to be served. So we came up with the idea for the Education Center. And we are just in the process of completing it. We are just working with the county to bring water to us, which will happen in the next couple of weeks, months. And just fully funding that project right now is our biggest need, because once 2021 hits, opening that up to the community to use as a resource is going to be completely transformational for our site.
When the kids come through your village, what kind of reactions do they have? Is it holy cow? Is it this is obviously this isn't like anything they've ever seen before, but I'd like to hear it. What's from the mouths of babes, if you will? Like, what are they saying?
It depends on the school. So when we had Hickory Day School come out here, I heard a lot of, wow, people lived like this? This is wild. I can't believe people lived like this. No running water, no electricity, no Walmart. And then I had a group of kids from Burke County come out who said, wow, this is the biggest house I've ever seen, when they were looking at one of our 3-story cabins. And I would love to live in a house like that. So I think it's important to realize that every child that visits has their own background. They all bring their own stories to the table when they're interacting with the village, and so it's really important to keep it historical and to try to let them relate. Don't relate for them. And so that's been a nice thing to learn. And when they see the artists at work, all of them have the same reaction. There's not as much of a disbursement of reactions. It's wow, there's a fire. Look at that blacksmith. I mean, they're just,
right,
enamored by that. But also, they've never seen someone work on an open flame that close to them, and they can feel the heat of the fire. And, they think that person's a superstar. They ask for their autographs. Like our Native American storyteller, he literally starts a fire in his hands while he is talking to the kids and shows them how to use flint. He can and literally whittle an arrow within 2 minutes, and they're just amazed at these skills.
Yeah, and these skills that the demonstrators have, unfortunately, we've talked a little bit about offline about this, is that these skills are diminishing with, and not their personal skills, of course, are not diminishing, but the amount of people that know how to use these skills are diminishing. And what you guys are doing is keeping that in the forefront, keeping that on top of mind for some folks that might not necessarily have even considered, learning how to do these things. So, what do you think is the most important thing that folks learn when they come to your village?
So I think, I don't expect every kid to go off and say, "Mom, Dad, I want to be a blacksmith."
Right. Mom, I want to learn how to put together brooms for a living.
Right. Like I don't expect that. What I do expect is that through observing someone working with their hands, that they can be inspired to know that they too can create something for themselves and have a sense of pride in that object and that process. And, I really remember talking with Kim Ellington, one of our potters, about this. And he said the most important thing about teaching a child a historic craft or trade is that they go through the process of failure. So when you're making a piece of pottery out of clay, you are using your hands, and you can create something, and then you can put it into the kiln, and it doesn't really look the way you thought it was going to look. And that experience of failure and then sitting back down at the wheel the next day to do that piece, it's a wonderful life experience, because so many of these people in our world, they grow up and they don't run into failure, and they have no strategies for how to deal with it when they're 40 or 50. And if we can teach people to keep coming back and trying and using these skills, that's what self-reliance is, and that's what American history is based on.
Right. I completely agree with you. And it's the resiliency of America is what's going to get us through these times we're living through right now, if you want to be very, very honest and very prescient about the situation. But the demonstrators that you have, they range from blacksmiths to candle makers to potters to all these things. And what I think is just unbelievable is that these folks, no matter how far that we've come as a society, that they are still preserving this, and they're still showing folks the traditional way of crafting things and all that good stuff. So it's amazing to me, because as easy it is to look up a YouTube video to learn how to do something, it does not take the place of actually sitting beside someone and learning how to build a fire by hand, learning how to make a horseshoe over an open fire. That's got to open up some hearts and minds when those kids come through. Absolutely.
I think that there's so much that can be learned through the process of problem solving that kids don't get outside of a tech world. We were talking earlier, like with COVID, all of these kids are doing online instruction, and I think that there's been major strides there, but I also do agree with you that there are certain things that really cannot be taught in an online format. And it goes back to that thing about failure, is you can curve your failures into successes sometimes. Like Eddie Hamrick, he's a woodwright I've worked with building violins, and he taught me certain ways. Like if you accidentally scrape out that concave part of the violin a little too much, there are ways to sort of remedy that, but you wouldn't know that watching a video. You'd just be like, oh man, I messed that up. But if you had your teacher right there with you, they would say, well, if that ever happens, you need to do this, this, and this. And I think there's so much value in learning those little tiny fixes.
Right, and it shows and it teaches folks how to, it goes back to resiliency and learning how to be self-sufficient. And I think that we're so guilty of that in having technology basically remedy all of our problems. Mm-hmm. And, having those folks that are able to, not necessarily have to rely on technology is just absolutely mind-blowing to me, because as reliant as I am on technology for all the things that I do, sitting here as a producer of a podcast network, it's amazing to see that those skills are still able to be done, and it blows my mind every time I think about it. So on Street Circle Drive, we always have a food segment. We always either talk about local restaurants or places that we've, especially during COVID, the best takeout spots. I'd love to talk to you about the food and the beer and everything else that comes out of Hart Square. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I think for most people it might be a little strange, some of the stuff that we do out there. But, I think that we, on our festival day, normally we have the Catawba Valley Cooking Guild, and they do a wonderful job of really bringing to life that history in our tavern cabin. All the different things that would have been made back then. I think that we assume there was no variety back then, but really there was a strong cultural heritage to food. That was a way to keep your heritage alive. So if you were a German immigrant, that was something that was very important to you. Your music, your food, same with Irish, same with even, the Native American cultures. And I think, we try to do a good job of representing all of those on our festival day. And then, of course, for the Christmas event, the chestnuts are just a huge hit, and it 100% is credited to the song. Everyone hears about these roasted chestnuts, but most people have never had one. So if you're going to have a food item at Hart Square, that's the one to have.
Right on. Mm-hmm. I, guilty as charged, have never had a roasted chestnut. What do they taste like? Honestly,
they taste very buttery in a lot of ways. They taste a lot like a pecan, but they also taste kind of like a mix of the Brazil nuts. They're a little hardier than a pecan. They're not as soft.
Awesome. That's good to know. That's good to know. Because you hear the song, you're like, I don't know. Are they good? Who knows?
Yeah. You got to get over the creepy factor first before you decide to try them. Are they safe?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd like to also just take a second to thank our sponsor, Time Genies. If you and your business are in need of top to bottom cleaning or organizing or just someone to make your life just a little bit easier, head over to time-genies.com to find out more. Karen and her team are fantastic. Our studio and offices use Time Genies, and we really couldn't be happier. So check them out, give them a call. They can help you with just about anything. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on Street Circle Drive again. We really appreciate it. We ask all of our guests this question, and it's called our magic wand question.
Oh. So do I get one?
You do get a magic wand for this segment.
Yes.
So, Rebecca, I hand you a magic wand, and
thank you.
You're welcome. Anytime. I just would like it back at some point. Tell me what you would do if you did have a magic wand in regards to Hart Square.
I love that question. That's such a good question. I actually was thinking about that because someone told me that this would be asked on this podcast and that I could potentially take this wand home.
You do, yes.
So I thought about this, and when I was walking around yesterday, I thought about, I wish that I could go back in time and interview every family that lived in each of the cabins, because all I have on them is written history, and a lot of written history excludes things. It includes marriages, deaths, births. It might, someone might have written down grandma's bread recipe, but I really wish that I could have firsthand accounts of what these people did on a daily basis and what songs they sang in their living room and what kind of prayers they had over dinner. And I feel like a lot of that has been lost.
Right. So you're basically, you want a time machine.
Yeah, basically. I want a time machine. Screw the magic wand. Give me a time machine.
Well, yeah. It can be multi-use.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to take my wand back then.
All right.
So, you mentioned music, and you and I both, we play music out in Hickory and the surrounding areas. let's talk a little bit about the influence in music at your spot, because I know traditional music is very important to you. So how is music incorporated at Hart Square?
I think that's a great question. It's a multi-generational thing, actually. So my grandfather, Dr. Bob, who started Hart Square, was a banjo player. And my grandmother was a professionally trained musician and upright bass player. And when they started Hart Square Festival 35 years ago, the bands were a huge part of it. It was the big part of the energy. The Sigmund Stringers, they were there the very first year, and their third generation, who's around my age, still plays at the festival, which is really precious. And, I met a few years ago David Holt, who's a ethnomusicologist, and he shared with me that he actually came to Hart Square Festival to collect songs and meet musicians who were preserving this heritage, and that was so special to me. He ended up being a very good friend of my grandfather's and now is a friend of Hart Square. And I think that a lot of people like that, Wayne Erbson from Asheville, who also is a massive preservationist and just amazing musician, who's working hard to keep our music alive. All our participants, the Cockman Family Band, who is an award-winning heritage winners of gospel and bluegrass, have been, God, I don't even know how many generations they have. They have so many Cockmans now. There's like 20 of them, and it's just really special to bring that to life out there, and I hope we can do more with that moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Music is transcends generations, because the same music that those folks were playing when they were living in those cabins out there, or that music is still being played today, and the influences are still being taken from all those players from back in the 1800s. And I think that's just absolutely fantastic. So, Rebecca, if our listeners want to find out more about Hart Square, how to donate to Hart Square, how to buy tickets, and all that good stuff, how can they do that?
Sure. So we have a website that's very easy to remember. It's just hartsquare.com, and that's HART. On that website, you can find tickets, you can find ways to donate, you can find a little information about our founder and about what we do. We also have a Facebook page that we're fairly active on, and Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so the Christmas Festival is coming up very, very soon.
It is.
It is. All the information is about that on there as well, I'm sure.
Yes, and I am really excited about that event just because it's been something we've been able to grow year over year, and just have a lot of new artisans in that event this year. We've got a spoon carver, a blacksmith, a weaver, obviously the chestnuts. We've got a tavern cooker. We have an organist, Cornhusk Angels, and probably a lot of other stuff I'm forgetting. But it really is got a lot of stuff going on that day.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we also talk about other events going on here on Street Circle Drive, and I would also like to, encourage everyone to go check out the Downtown Hickory Facebook pages and all that good stuff. There's some good holiday events coming up there as well. Obviously, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there's not a lot of public events going on, but there are a select few. So if you are just dying to get out of the house, make sure you do mask up and check out some of these events that are happening around our area. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming. It was great to have you. Absolutely. And once you guys head over to the Hart Square website, make sure you buy tickets for the festival, because they do sell out super quick and all that good stuff. So, again, this has been Street Circle Drive here on The Mesh.